Well, good morning, everyone. Pastor Corey Rowland here with Yorksville First Midvale and Newport United Methodist Church, bringing you devotional today out of Hebrews 3, verse 13. And it says, "But you must warn one another every day while it is still today, so that none of you will be deceived by sin and harden your heart to God." And what a powerful message for the church. What a powerful message for what we ought to do for one another. It says we must warn one another every day. And the writer of Hebrews is saying, don't wait. While it's still today, warn them. He says, warn them. Why? For two reasons. One, that they might not be deceived by sin. Sin is very deceptive, and sin is always looking to deceive us, telling us it's not wrong, telling us we can do what we want. And so he's saying, warn one another, guard one another, protect one another from that. And so that they don't harden their hearts towards God. Sin and hardening your heart towards God goes hand in hand. And the writer of Hebrews is saying that we must warn one another against this. Now, this is a beautiful picture for what the church ought to be. You know, the church used to be, especially the Methodist Church, especially John Wesley, they used to be churches and church members that would call out one another if they saw them in sin or if they saw them doing something wrong. They would not be bashful about it. They would go up to that person and say, hey, you're doing wrong, and warn them and tell them not to. One of the biggest tenets that John Wesley created was what is known as the accountability partner, which is somebody in the church who would watch out for you and somebody who you would watch out for. And if they were doing something wrong, you would call them out. And if you were doing something wrong, they would call you out and try to get you back on that right path. And we here in America, we have become so individualized that if somebody were to do that to us in the church today, we would probably be offended. In fact, we would probably want to leave the church and go somewhere else. But it is actually a biblical principle, and it is a sound principle. Christianity is not meant to be a lone wolf thing. The church is not meant to be full of a whole bunch of different isolated people. The church is meant to be a family, and a family is supposed to stick so close together and love one another so much that we are supposed to be honest with one another and warn one another so that we might defend ourselves and guard ourselves against sin, and that we might not be deceived by that sin. You know, it's so much easier for sin and for Satan to attack us when we are all by ourselves, when we are alone. And so the Bible is telling us to guard against this. And so my message for you today is, especially those of us that are in the church routinely, those of us who have family, those of us who are Christian brothers and sisters, my message is we must be open to hearing from one another. We must be open to talking to one another. We must be the family that we are called to be, not just a bunch of isolated individuals that are sitting in the pews and then leaving right away to start our lives, but people that meet together, people that have fellowship together, and people that are willing to help one another in their Christian walk. A church that does that is a church that will be powerful, and a church that will overcome sin, and a church that will conquer Satan. Amen.